One of the most important things we can talk about when it comes to our mobile lives is security and application security. This week, a photography filter app called Meitu gained a lot of popularity in the United States and still has a lot of questions about it. So let's sit down and talk about it for a couple minutes. Meitu is a photo editing app from China, but really it's a filtering app. You're going to be applying a whole bunch of effects on top of yourself, and especially a whole lot of makeup. So of course there's nothing wrong with a photo filtering app. We've all used them. And Meitu does that pretty much the same way. It takes your existing pictures, or you can shoot new pictures, and will apply filters on top of it. The big deal here is that it's got this cutesy Japanese style filter that really makes it look like you have makeup on. So it's the sort of thing that, kids will be using a lot. And it already has more than 10 million downloads from Google Play in the United States. On iOS, we don't have numbers, but suffice it to say it's probably pretty popular there as well. So what's the big deal? Well, folks who are way smarter than me started tearing apart the app code, as they're prone to do, and found some things they didn't like. It's got a whole lot of analytics tracking code inside of it. Now that's not anything new. Any app you have ever used uses some sort of analytics. That's so the developers can know how people are using their apps, who's using their apps, how long their apps are being used. Analytics in and of themselves are very, very good thing. So what people don't like about all the analytics and tracking in Meitu is that it seems to have gone a little overboard and is either doing things in ways that, in the case of the iOS version, aren't allowed, or in Android just seem to be really overstepping. So at best, it's going to be harvesting information that maybe it shouldn't have, or more than it needs to do its job. At worst, it's somebody who's actively taking information off of your phone and sending it back to the developers somewhere else. You'll read in a lot of stories, it's sending it to servers in China. That doesn't maybe bother me quite as much. Servers can be wherever they are. I think people just worry a little bit about whether the Chinese government has direct access to these servers. And that is a concern, but maybe not my number one concern. Probably the biggest sin here is that it's been collecting your IMEI. This is a unique identifier for your phone itself, for the hardware. And there are other ways to track things within apps without needing that very specific number. But you have to remember that this is a Chinese app, and in China, things work a little differently because of what's called the Great Firewall of China. But the problem is, what they have to do over there isn't necessarily the way it should be done in the rest of the world. So the code hasn't really changed that much. They didn't clean it up for use outside of China. Jonathan on Twitter did a really good job of explaining a lot of what's going on here in a whole series of tweets this week. But really the conclusion is this: Meitu isn't doing anything that thousands of other greedy developers aren't doing and selling you out. The tracking companies need exposure. Yes, there is absolutely tracking going on and analytics, and the way they're doing it puts a lot of people ill at ease. As it turns out, I know some of the PR people who work for Meitu, and we hit them up overnight asking for an explanation for any of this, and they mass emailed it out to a bunch of journalists. So here it is. We'll have a link down in the description so you can read it yourself. Underlined in the very first paragraph, Meitu does not sell user data in any form. That's great to hear. Of course, they have to actually live up to that. They go through a little further and explain all the offsite servers, why things work in certain ways in regards to permissions for the iOS version and for the Android version. And again, all of this is sort of perfectly rational. It makes sense. Yes, Meitu is collecting analytics, it's collecting data, and yeah, it's probably doing it in ways that other developers wouldn't for any number of reasons. And that's something you do want to keep in mind when you're installing this app, or if your kids are going to be using it on their phones. Does it mean you are effectively handing over your wallet to some app company? Yes and no. Probably not really too much worse than any number of apps that are on your phone today. What it is, however, is a really good reminder that you need to keep an eye on the permissions that you are allowing when you install an application. Does an app like this really need access to your phone calls? No, and they explain why they have it in their explanation, but again, that doesn't make it the right way to do things. But it is sort of all or nothing. Once you've approved it and once you've said, yes, you can live on my phone, you've handed all that stuff over. So absolutely, think twice before installing it. Enjoy it if you want to. Just be aware of what it is you're giving up when you do.